Welcome to another episode of the Quantum Connection Roundtable. Today, we are thrilled to welcome our next guest, Dr. Sofia Adams. She's a visionary in holistic health and wellness. After completing a rigorous 4-year medical program, clinical rotations, and a homeopathic externship in Chicago, Sofia founded Vale of Health, which is a virtual holistic consulting practice that has transformed lives across the United States. So today she joins us to share her journey, her passion for blending science and nature, and her insights into how holistic health can revolutionize the way we care for ourselves. So welcome to the Quantum Connection Roundtable, Sofia. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Kelley. Thank you, Lauren. I'm so honored that you've even thought of me and reached out to me for this. I just have listened. I know I told Kelley right when I hopped on, I listened to a couple of your guys' episodes, and I just love the lack of fear that you have in regards to talking about energy and medicine. So that's what I'm all about. So I'm really glad we're just on the same page, and I'm looking forward to kind of the topics we talk about today.
Yay.
We
So
love
do you
energy medicine, so I'm very excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, it's hard not to just jump right in and get into the nitty gritty. So before we do that, because both Lauren and I love to just get into it, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your journey and how you got to establish Vale of Health and kind of how you practice today?
Yeah, I could probably talk half an hour about just kind of like my whole development on why I even found naturopathic medicine and why I kind of started my own practice. But I'll be kind of brief. But I grew up in a very small community in Southeast Iowa with a lot of Amish people. And so I was always surrounded by people who used God's creation for medicine and for healing and to actually eat real food, right? So I was always kind of like around that. But grew up being a very healthy kid. But when I turned 14, I started experiencing heartburn symptoms every day. And that's not normal for a 14-year-old to experience. Long story short, you know, conventional doctors gave me a pill. My mom refused to have me take it, found a homeopath. She helped me within a month. My heartburn was gone. And still to this day, I don't have to take any homeopathy for heartburn. And it's been 16 years. Fast forward then a few years later, I had great anxiety and depression in my life due to something that happened. Where did I go? To the homeopath. She helped revive me. A couple years later, I had eczema spread across my entire body. And I was like, what the heck? And where did I go? I went back to the homeopath. And that was probably the longest journey. As we know, with skin, it sometimes takes the longest amount of time to heal. But again, I was like, okay, third time's a charm. I got to look into doing this as a profession, right? And so I just Googled, sorry, excuse me. I Googled homeopathic schools near me, and National University of Health Sciences popped up, Doctor of Naturopathic Medicine degree. And I was like, I have no idea what a naturopathic doctor is. No one in Iowa, here in Iowa, there's no one that does this. And so I went toward the school, loved it. It was an integrated program. There was Doctor of Chiropractic, acupuncture, massage therapy, Oriental medicine. I just felt really drawn to all the modalities coming together in one clinical space and also one collaborative learning space. And that really showed me there's not just one modality to help heal. There are so many modalities, and everyone's going to have a specific time in their lives where one is going to maybe be the one that they need, right? And so to be in that atmosphere, I really saw the benefits of all of these modalities, not only coming together, but also as their own beings. So I went through that program. I knew going into it that I wanted to specialize in homeopathy because I had so greatly benefited from it. So that's why I did the externship that I did with medical doctors in the suburbs, because I got to see from a primary care stance how homeopathy can totally shift everything.
Mm.
And all that they were doing was homeopathy. Sometimes they would prescribe something because they needed it, right, for a specific concern. Or something that went too long, right? There's always those couple cases, or needing to run lab work and things like that. But homeopathy just seemed to always be the answer. And so when I got out of that externship, it really prepared and really catapulted my confidence and ability to start my own practice and start using and incorporating these energetic medicines. Because again, I was just around it happening and working all the time. And so, yeah, I started Vale of Health. I'm not going to take time into saying why I chose that name. Maybe that's for another time. But I want people to have a space to be able to feel like all their determinants of health are being covered. They're creating their own Vale of Health wherever they are. And so I started a virtual practice. When I graduated, it was in the height of COVID. And so when I started this practice, we were kind of like that hybrid moment, right? People were kind of starting to feel more comfortable kind of seeing people in person. But I just said, I live in Southeast Iowa. It's hard enough, figuring out, okay, what's the best place to have a practice, because I live around so many small towns, and are people really going to drive an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours to come see me? You know what's easier? Being virtual. And so now not only am I helping people here in the US, but I've even reached people all over the world now, which is just wild. I never expected it, but it's one of those great blessings of having things like this so that we can do what we're doing right now, right? We have Kentucky, LA, and Iowa, like we're all on the same call. So I'm really grateful for this space to be able to help people from all over, because everyone needs this medicine. It's so warranted. Because as we mentioned before, right now in our society, we have a sick care system and not one that's actually promoting health. So I'm very grateful for my degree in naturopathic medicine, because it gave awareness to all the determinants of health that impact why we feel the way we do, right? So not only am I recommending homeopathy or flower essence or tissue salts, right? But also, hey, if you're constipated, what's our hydration like, right? We got to get back to the basics. I'm not just going to recommend a pill, because that's called green allopathy, right? We always, always, always have to look at the lifestyle as well, because that's going to impact why we're resonating and why we're feeling the way that we're feeling.
And so you briefly mentioned that homeopathy is an energetic medicine. Can you explain what that means to our listeners if anybody doesn't understand?
Yeah, so homeopathy, how the remedies are actually made is they are derived from original substances and gone through a series of dilutions and succussions to get to the point that the energetic imprint is all that's left. There's no original substance left. So, for example, a big difference between like tissue salts and homeopathy that people don't realize is that homeopathy is a heterogeneous substance. Okay, so we're not deficient in the ink of a cuttlefish. We're not deficient in lachesis, which is snake venom, right? But sometimes we need those remedies because of the provings are showing exactly what we need, right? With lachesis, they're individuals that are having maybe hot flashes at night, right? Or the ink of a cuttlefish, which is sepia, which are, individuals, maybe they have uh, the postpartum depression, right? And are needing it. So it's an energetic medicine because of the way that the remedies are created. So they're diluted and succussed. Potency is what it is. And tissue salts have a potency as well. They're a 6x potency, but they're not a heterogeneous substance. They're actual micro or inorganic micro minerals that are found throughout various cells in our body and organs. And so at a 6x potency, they have both a nutritive and a homeopathic benefit. So the nutritive is kind of that first step, right? We're able to, when we take that tissue salt, it absorbs through our mucous membranes, through our lingual glands, right? And in our mouth and underneath our tongue. And it goes right into our bloodstream. And when it reaches the cells that need it, it gets more absorption because it's more at a bioavailable size. And so that differs tissue salts also from from mineral supplementation. Minerals are big, large molecules, and if you take too much, too often, you get toxic effects. But you don't see that with tissue salts. With tissue salts, because they're microdoses, they're able to be absorbed by the cells more easily, and if your body doesn't need it, it excretes it. But the second step of tissue salt absorption is once it enters the cells, it starts to do those biochemical changes nutritively, but then homeopathically. And the way that it can do it homeopathically is because of the charge of the 6x or 12x, right? Those are also a common recommendation too for tissue salts, 6x or 30x potency. But 6x is usually what's used. And so when those cellular changes start to happen in that like second step of the cell, we start to get that homeopathic benefit where it starts to maximize absorption from the foods that we're eating. We forget that these microminerals are also found in foods. So we don't necessarily always need to take them supplementally. We know that we can also get them from certain ingredients too, because these inorganic ingredients come from two compounds, right? That we can get so commonly from food. So if we start to incorporate those things as well, It'll help maximize absorption. And so that's why the topic of magnesium, right, is very, very well known. You take magnesium as a supplement to decrease muscle cramps, let's just say, for example. Why is it not effective for half of our clients? Because it's not the right form. We have to have magnesia phosphorica to start to create actual neurological change because of the phosphorica element to then decrease muscle cramps in the future. And then because of that homeopathic benefit, they don't have to take it the rest of their life because it actually created cellular energetic change.
Yes. The cellular energetic change is like a pattern shift. And
Yes.
sometimes when I use a cell salt with a let's say magnesium chloride, and then you use the cell salt magnesium in initiation, it's almost like priming the pump so that the energetic frequency of the magnesium that you're going to be giving yourself, the magnesium chloride, you are changing the energetics at the cellular level for an uptake and a pattern shift, because the human body has it's very adaptable, and so you can adapt without that mineral, right? And so then when you add the mineral, the body's like, oh God, my calcium shell, everything, I can't break, and no, and it goes into a little bit of a panic. But the cell salts, I think in terms of those frequency paradoxes that you're working with, you can work with those paradoxes where small micro becomes macro and then opens those doorways, correct?
1000%. I completely agree. Yeah. And yeah, you made me think of something, and I'm kind of blanking on it right now. I might come back to it later, but something you said, sorry if I've totally messed up this whole podcast here. I hope you guys
Oh
go back
no,
and
it's
edit
okay.
it. Crap, I lost that thought.
Well, the magic of frequency medicine is really so interesting here. Did you get it back?
I did get it.
Okay,
Yes.
go ahead, yeah.
So one thing that I like to tell clients is that whether it be tissue salts, homeopathy, flower essences, right? Anything, even the biophotonic energy too of herbalism too, right? It's creating that nudge. And
Yes.
that, because we forget, or I should say, we don't forget, it's the fact that our mind has been brainwashed into thinking a pill is what fixes things. We forget that we are a self-regulating homeodynamic being that's continually adapting. And so these frequency medicines are actually creating that nudge to alert, right? To knock on the door of that self-healing mechanism to tell it, hey, it's now time to start working optimally now. And I'm giving you the nourishment, I'm giving you the energy and the frequency that you need. Please accept it, right? This is the nudge that I'm giving you so that you can start to be vital again. Because there's some reason why you have become unvital. There's some reason why your vibration has totally kind of been tweaked, right? It's not going at that same hertz as it was before. And so I think all these modalities that we're talking about, right, give it that nudge.
I love that. And so when you're using cell salts, do you prescribe them or suggest them for emotional disturbances? Or on the flip side, do you see emotional changes after someone has taken cell salts because of that energetic pattern?
I can see it both ways, and it kind of depends on the individual too. If someone has a very serious mental and emotional imbalance, I'm usually always recommending homeopathy. I think that just gets a little bit deeper because again, a 6X still has the original substance. Homeopathy is past Avogadro's number, and with a lot of mental and emotional concerns, I usually go up to well past 30C, 200C, 1M potencies to really, because it's on the higher etheric plane of their being. And that's where flower essences too are so beneficial for the mental and emotional well-being. Now, tissue salts, what we notice too is, oh, sorry, you can go ahead.
Can you stop and explain those potencies? Because I think that the listeners may need to know decimal, centesimal, millesimal, and then there's an LM that's above that, and that is the frequency that is transgenerational, and it goes really, really deep in that etheric DNA coding.
Yeah.
So in terms of the dosings and the paradox, because it is a
Mm,
paradox, because sometimes a decimal is a smaller amount than a centesimal or a millesimal, and right. So if you
yeah.
can sort of give them a little bit of what you're talking about with the dosing and how you work with it in terms of the frequencies, weave that in.
Yeah. Man, this could be its own episode.
I
It's
know.
so complicated. Um, and also every single person's different. I've given
Yeah.
even a 30C to someone with mental and emotional imbalances, and it worked so well, and maybe even better even than what a 200C would been. So we always have to look at the person as a whole and their totality of symptoms and their history of sensitivities.
Mhm.
Some individuals are so sensitive to everything. I mean, there's people that even smell homeopathic remedies and can have an effect. They don't even need to take it. They can like
Yeah.
dip a toothpick into a wet dose, put it on their big toe, and it gets rid of their eczema. I mean, this
I
could be an episode
administer,
in and of itself. But yeah,
yeah,
to
I
go back
administer
to
them in my biomagnetism with just a frequency number and not even in real life dosing, and
yeah,
it too does the same thing. So we're talking fully frequency medicine here. We
yes,
are talking about where the elements of light and sound collide into all of these worlds and how we interact with elements of light and sound,
100%,
biologically,
100%.
emotionally, spiritually.
Yeah. So the C potencies are, I guess, typically where I navigate, I would say the most in regards to homeopathy. So the C is like 100, right? It's that centennial, right? So it's one drop and then 99 parts water. So it's one drop of the original, right, from the mother tincture, 99 drops of water, goes through a series of dilutions and succussions, and then the next one you take just one drop from that, right? 1C, do it again, all the way up to 30C, all the way up to 200C, to 500C, right? And then same thing's kind of with like 1M. It's that same type of thing. So the higher you go on that scale, the more and more diluted and succussed it is. But as we know in medical research, is it doesn't mean that it's more diluted, meaning that it's less strong. What it actually is there's actually more nanoparticles, and that's why we get a, a much bigger effect. Nanoparticle medicine is wild. I get I get research every single day. I've subscribed to PubMed and I literally get things on nanoparticle medicine all of the time. It is a hot topic right now, and people are realizing that that's going to be the future of medicine right there is nanoparticles. Um, so yeah, I hope that kind of sums it up a little bit.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
want to like
great.
dive in too
That's
much more
great.
into it,
Yeah,
but
because when they hear the numbers, then it kind of makes sense that there is a scale. It's going from
yes.
100 to 100 million, right? There's yeah, and
Yeah.
it's a dilution, but it's a paradox. And so you're kind of working with bigger doses as smaller nanoparticle
Yeah.
doses and
Yeah.
smaller doses as bigger, more in the physical,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that gets out in those bigger numbers, you're getting more into the etheric frequency energetics that
Yeah.
then influence the light and sound of the physical and the
Yes.
matter, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, you even get to, I get individuals that I create like flower essence blends for, right? Or even homeopathic remedies. It starts shifting the household. And I'm not even recommending anything to anyone else that lives in that house, but just even them taking that medicine is changing their entire aura. It's truly shifting every single aspect of their being. So it's pretty profound. Yeah. Just kind of our brains can't even fathom the expansiveness that God's medicine is. We don't even have the brains to even logically make it make sense sometimes. I don't think it's just like RFK Jr. He says sometimes we can't even quantitate this stuff because it's so profound. It's something we've never seen before. And since we're on the topic of nanoparticles too, I think maybe this example could be helpful for people to realize why nanoparticles maybe work so well too, just to give them kind of an idea. Think about gold, right? How many of you guys have like gold wedding rings, right? Um, that's not magnetic, right? You know, you don't stick it onto something and it sticks, right? But when you dilute and succuss it down, all like really, really far down to a very, very, very small nanoparticle, it becomes magnetic. That's how nanoparticle medicine, right? It starts to create that cellular shift on that cellular level. Not that, your cells are going to be like connected together magnetically, but it's just, it emphasizes that the frequency shifts when we start to dilute and succuss things. And that's why, again, one of the reasons, right? One of the examples that homeopaths may give as to why this medicine can be so powerful.
Interesting. I don't know that I have a question right now because I'm digesting the whole nanoparticle component. Lauren, do you have something for her?
Well, let's dive a little bit deeper into this aspect of energetic healing and how this assists the body in the healing mechanism. So if we're energetic beings and we are, when we create health, right, we are using all of the components of emotional, spiritual, energetic, physical. And if you could dive into your perspective when you utilize these aspects of flower essences, of homeopathy, of tissue salts, and how you apply them into the notion of encouraging the dynamism of the human expression to find its way to its highest potential when it could be clouded, and how you find your way through that path as you
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. Yeah. Doctors can't do this in 15 minutes. I mean, this type of
Right.
analysis, it can take hours. My visits can range anywhere from 2 to 3 hours in length, even for someone who just has like one complaint, right? And then I also get those individuals who have 16 diagnoses, right? So you have to kind of focus in on, okay, like what is, when someone comes to me, right? What is affecting your daily living the most? What out of what you're experiencing is lessening your vitality? You have to kind of start there, because if you look at the whole crazy picture, it can be overwhelming for us healers, right? Because there's so many things going on. You have the influence of the environment, you have the influence of toxic people, right? Toxic foods. It can get overwhelming really quickly. So we have to get down to, okay, what you mentioned, right? Mental and emotional picture affecting our physical body. I see that in everyone. Every single organ dysfunction. Think of like, I just gave this example yesterday, actually, on a podcast of someone who has PMS symptoms and cramping with their menstrual cycles. Okay. A lot of conventional doctors will just look at the uterus, will look at the ovaries. Okay. Is anything going on there? Right. They forget about the main organ that processes all hormones, which is our liver. And one thing that I'll ask, right, individuals when they maybe come to me with menstrual cycle imbalances is, what emotion do you feel is out of control in your life? What emotion do you feel is taking control of your life? And kind of elaborate, right, on that aspect and kind of hear from them instead of giving and saying, okay, are you angry? Are you upset? Are you frustrated? Right? I just kind of let them have that moment. And a lot of the time, there is an element of anger in these women, or stories. They'll bring up stories on, and I was like, did that make you angry? And so that makes sense as to why then they're having these hormone imbalances, because their liver is overloaded. Because what emotion is tied to the liver? Anger, frustration, irritability. It all makes sense. You just have to get down to the root. It's not because of, let's just say a miscarriage that happened 10 years ago as to why maybe you're experiencing all of the menstrual cycle upsets. It's not just the miscarriage itself. There's anger and there's resentment that's happened from that. And that has been stored emotionally and energetically in certain organs in your body. And that's why you feel the way that you do. And so when you start to get to the true root of why you're experiencing what you're experiencing, you find areas in which organs are compromised. That's where we can maybe think of some tissue salts, right? What are some good liver promoting tissue salts, right? Anxiety, I'm sure you guys hear it and see it all the time. I think all of us have some level of anxiety in our lives. A very common tissue salt for that is what? Caliphos, right? Very common, well-known one. Well, when we think about someone who is anxious, are they having difficulties with focusing and concentration? Usually, okay, not all the time, but sometimes. So we're thinking, okay, what organ is compromised with that? We think always the brain, but we forget about the spleen. The spleen
Mhm.
energetically holds a lot of that lack of concentration and focus. Well, guess what organ holds a lot of Caliphos? The spleen.
Wow.
So it's all tied together. When you just ask a few more questions, when you ask about, like you said, the mental and emotional aspects of our well-being, you'll always find an answer. And what's beautiful is the client will always tell you. I
Yes.
barely say anything in my visits. I'll prompt here and there. They always tell me the direction they need to go.
Yeah.
They always say some story, they share something that they're feeling or experiencing, and it will always guide to whether it be a tissue salt, whether it be a homeopathic remedy, whether it be a flower essence, right? Grief is a big one too. You hear a lot, right? And you'll hear it in their breath. They'll sigh after every single sentence. And even though they didn't on their intake form say anything about losing someone or grieving anything or the loss of something, you just know by the body language and by their breath and by their presence that they have lost something very significant. And so I'm taking notes, right? Just kind of just with their whole being, because there's some things that they don't say, but you energetically know as a healer that there's something a little bit deeper happening. And sometimes in that first visit, they're ready to talk about it, but sometimes it takes 3 or 4 visits to then be like, all right, I want to talk about this because I noticed it in the first, but you weren't ready to talk about it back then, right? You mentioned too, right, just all the other determinants of our health, right, that can be kind of impacting overall well-being. Like I mentioned, quality of food is a big one. If you're not getting actual quality, real food, nothing's going to work appropriately. And so we always have to, as healers, talk about that, because not only can you get, tissue salts, right, those microminerals from specific foods, that's going to help enhance your healing. But if your body is resonating at such a low frequency, your body isn't going to accept those nutrients from your food. And so that's usually why you got to start with frequency medicine, because if you only recommend diet, people are going to quit. People aren't going to stick with it because they're not seeing results in the first 1 to 3 months. You have to use frequency medicine, because that is that, like we mentioned, that's that nudge that's going to start telling the GI tract, right? Okay, it's time to absorb these. You're ready to absorb these now, right?
Yeah, so fascinating, all of it really. I want to tie in that nutrition component and the cell salts component, and how this goes back to the mitochondria and
Mm,
how they, have their own frequency, right? And when their frequency drops, that's when we begin to see disease. So in Western medicine, that would be the conversation around mitochondrial health and how that is impacting disease progression. You're explaining the same thing, but the energetic component of it. It's just that Western medicine doesn't recognize it as that. And then you add on the homeopathic remedies or the cell salts to increase that nutrient component, right? To enhance its bioavailability, so to speak.
yeah,
And then, so how do you, or do you incorporate lifestyle changes into the whole package as well?
yeah.
Sunlight, grounding, all the things that we all love.
Yeah, yeah. No, this is such a great question, because it can be so overwhelming in a first visit, right? With, okay, this is a homeopathic remedy, a flower and tissue salt recommendation. And then and again, I was trained as a, tra- you know, traditional naturopath. Your care plans are lengthy because they got to make all these changes. And you realize that people get overwhelmed. And so you have to start with just what is doable right now. What's going to be safest for your body to not feel like what you're giving them is a threat.
Yeah.
And so you have to start with the things that are number one, doable, that are safe, that they feel like they can accomplish and do. If that's like for example, diabetes, right? I hate diagnoses, but I'm going to label it just because a majority of people look at people that way, right? Diabetes, imbalance of blood sugar, right? One of the only lifestyle recommendations I'm going to give is get up and move your body for 5 minutes every single hour. And after eating, because you only eat to 80% full, right? A majority of people should. But that means you got to chew with intention first to even know when you're 80% full. So when you eat to 80% full, move your body for 5 to 10 minutes after every single meal or every single snack. You'll notice your hemoglobin A1C will get better, your blood sugar utilization, right, will get better just with that one lifestyle change. That's doable, right? 5 minutes walk, I can do that. Yeah. Right. And guess what? We'll talk. A month later, they'll be like, my pants are looser. I'm able to fit into things I wasn't able to before. Did we do anything or recommend any specific diet changes? No. All we said was just move your body. So we sometimes forget that sometimes it can just be that simple.
Yeah.
And with just changing that one thing, they then are ready to take on other challenges. So then they'll be more open to the topic of, okay, I'm ready to start incorporating omega-3s into my diet. I was okay at the beginning to incorporate omega-3s supplementally, but now I'm ready to incorporate omega-3s in my food. Okay. So that would be kind of like another lifestyle step. Another one too is, eating according to your menstrual cycle, right? A lot of women right away would be like, that is too much of a change for me. I don't feel comfortable. I just kind of want, again, that nudge, right? Because a lot of women don't have energy to put forth into making their own food either. There are obviously those outliers where some people go right into conversations with me and they want to use food as medicine right away. I would say that's like 1% of the people I work with.
Wow.
I have only ever had, so in the last 3 years of just having my own practice, I've only had one person come to me wanting a preventative plan.
Mhm.
One person.
Interesting.
Everyone else is on the mindset of, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay, even though the door is being knocked, right? The symptoms are there, it's being knocked. But until the door crashes down because all those signs and symptoms have been knocking for so long, they're finally going to do something when the door gets caved in.
Yeah.
And that's a majority of the people
Wow.
that I work with. So imagine if we would start with homeopathy, food as medicine, tissue salts, flower essences at the beginning when we start to feel these emotions develop, because as we know, emotions always manifest into the body. If we could
Yeah.
start there, oh my gosh, this world would be so much healthier. But we don't, because so many people don't want to invest, right, in their well-being and in their health. And so they are down this trail, right, as Dr. Lou Edwards, who is one of my great professors that I had in med school, she said, if you walk 10 miles into the woods, you got to walk 10 miles back. And that is so true. Yeah, with healing, with any type of modalities that you use, right? It's just a fact. Yeah.
Yeah. And so in this conversation, when we're talking about someone who's got a list of complications or health issues or diagnoses, say they're not ready to change their diet or quit smoking or quit their soda, would you ever still recommend a cell salt or a homeopathic remedy despite these other things that may appear to be competition for?
Yeah. Yeah. In naturopathic medicine, we would call those like obstacles to cure, right?
Mm.
We know like if someone's having lung issues and they're smoking, obviously that's an obstacle to cure, right? It's not going to help your ability to be able to breathe, right? That's just like a basic example. But yes, what's amazing too with incorporating frequency medicine, and I feel like maybe all three of us have had these or could probably share some examples, but when they start incorporating these modalities, their awareness expands tremendously. They start to realize, oh, this thing actually isn't benefiting me. And without me even telling them to no longer do it, they're intrinsically and innately starting to feel you know what? My body actually isn't resonating with this. And it was actually an obstacle to cure. A great
Aha.
example of this is people in their life as well, right? We give a flower essence because there's those quote unquote parasites in their life, that are causing so much stress, anger, irritability, frustration, lack of focus, you name it. You start giving a flower essence and they start to naturally gravitate away from those people that were stressing them for so long. I didn't have to say, hey, don't talk to Susie, right? Their consciousness is awakening with these modalities. I've had one client, I won't share all the specifics of her story because of HIPAA and everything, but just talked to her a couple nights ago, and she goes, every single session that we get done with, I always have a new revelation about my life. And that's exactly how we should be as healers, because we want people to walk away from our visits with an expansion, not only in their physical health, but their mental and emotional well-being, because that's what's going to give them the best longevity in the future. Because if we don't talk about the mental and emotional aspects of our health and we're only focused on, this tissue salt for this physical ailment of hemorrhoids or whatever it may be, right? We're not doing that person justice, because I don't want a client for the rest of their lives. I want to play a small part in this story right now. And if you need me 10 years from now, I'll be here, hopefully. But we should be focused on making sure that they are nourished mentally, emotionally, physically. And the thing that doctors don't talk about is spiritually.
Yep.
We have to, in a way, we need to pray over them, no matter what their religion is. We do need to pray those positivities or those affirmations, whatever we want to call it, right? Over their bodies, over their remedies we're recommending them. Because again, that's going to also nullify any negative energy that's around the visit, that's around the remedy. We don't know who else handled those remedies, right? We need to pray over them, and we need to have affirmations over them as well, because that's going to enhance our healing. But no one talks about it. But I feel okay to talk about it with you guys because I feel we're all on the same page with that.
Yeah. And you briefly mentioned expanding their consciousness, and really that is what the emotional work, digging in and dealing with the energetics of particular emotions, that is what that work equates to, is the expansion of consciousness. And it used to be kind of a separate conversation, and more people are bringing the awareness together, or the conversation together, around how emotions impact consciousness. They are kind of one and the same. And then you can add that third component of the nervous system. You can't separate those three. And so I love the idea that you work with all of that without having to yeah, go ahead, Lauren.
No, finish what you're going to say.
Oh, that's it.
Oh, so, to what you're saying, I notice that as a healer, we're not there to heal. We're there to create a space for a new choice to be made.
Yes.
And then the prayer is that I can see. So I was working with a client this week and I was like, I see you. I see you. I see the joy that you can feel from this slog that you've been slogging, and I can see it at the end of the conversation. The consult, she was like, I feel so much lighter, because I showed her just the perspective. That is the prayer, right? The prayer is, hey, I'm not really healing you. I'm creating a space, and then I'm witnessing it with you. So if we look at quantum physics, we're turning the particle into a wave back into a new particle. We're both looking at it at the same time. And I think the Bible has like a verse, the Matthew 18:20, is that what it is? Where two or more are gathered, I am there.
Yes.
It's that one.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that is basically just like, hey, guess what? Let's manifest something. I'm going to see a particle. You're going to see a particle. We're going to see a particle together. And because the two of us are seeing the particle together, we're checks and balancing each other. And we're both going to create it into being.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The mechanism and the metaphor of the mechanism all at the same time. Sometimes as a healer, I go to other healers because I'm like, can you just witness me? Otherwise I'm doing a session on myself and I just need a partner to
Right.
say, can you see
Right.
this? yes, I can see this. Let's look at it together. Done and done, you know?
Awesome. Yes. Well, another verse too is the kingdom of heaven is within you. Why
Mm,
do we forget that? We
mm.
have so much innate power that if we can tap into that, because again, our logical minds close that off, right? The kingdom of heaven is within you. Why would God say that, right? If it wasn't actually true. And then we think about the Holy Spirit and it infiltrates all living things. All my cells are surrounded and protected by the Holy Spirit. When you start to think like that, your whole life starts to change. And I know Dr. Zach
Mm.
Bush, I remember watching one of his videos and he said, a cancer cell, all it is it's just alone. It's sad and lonely and thinks that everything else around it has died. And so that's why it starts to multiply so it can have and start to create a community again. And when I heard that, I was like, that
Oh,
is chilling, but it's so true. When we think about, right, just as humanity, as beings, if there's only two people, you got to start procreating or else you're going to be done, right? So that's exactly what that cancer cell is thinking too. I just thought that was so profound.
oh my goodness. Yes. Wow. Because you're always trying to strive for that homeodynamic
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
And you will use whatever materials that you can to get there.
Yeah.
Another thing that's really worth noting is going back to the biology, and a lot of people say, talk about heavy metals and all of that, right? And it's interesting to look at the biology in terms of like lock and key and magnetics, right? Like where there's a positive, there's going to be a negative, and then everything is trying to find its partnership or balance or equality in the body. And if we don't have proper minerals that we're not getting from the soil, that we're not getting from our food, that we're not getting from the chain of our eating, like, our eating chain, like if the grass isn't right, then the cow's not right, then the person's not right, the whole chain, then the body will have these I mean, I'm just going to use metaphor and animate it. The body's got these little tentacles and it's trying to find the minerals, and it's like, where am I going to find my building blocks of my cells? There's no minerals. Oh, heavy metals, that works. And then it substitutes. And then now we've got a heavy metal problem because we weren't given the proper nutrition. And I think that, minerals and cell salts are so beautiful because we can supplement with them. Whereas for like vitamin A, we might want to get it from food instead of an
Mhm.
isolated, nutraceutical that's
Yeah.
like,
Chemically made. Yeah. Yeah. It's
chemically.
kind of like brought together and the
Yeah.
brands always make a difference too, right? There's some vitamin C that's sold at Walmart that comes from China that's
Yeah.
just chalk.
No, the ascorbic acid that is being made all comes from like the same factory on planet Earth. So that's a little, you got to just
Yeah.
look at that and be like, huh, it's a lot of power.
Yeah.
And they're
100%.
making molecules that are like phantom molecules that are like, basically it's like a Halloween costume of like a ghost with like a sheet that's over something that's not really the real molecule from Earth. The real molecule has a tyrosinase center and it's got all of the components and it's a compound, but the isolation is just it's like a zombie shell.
Wow.
And so you're using this like singular color from the rainbow when it usually has all of its friends, and
The spectrum.
yeah, the whole spectrum is along with it. And
Yeah.
then the body tries to find the necessary components because there are complexes, there are enzymatic processes that happen when you interact with a vitamin, for example. And if the
Yeah.
body doesn't have step 6, it's going to leach from the bone. It's going to leach that step wherever it is. So if you're taking an ascorbic acid, for example, and you don't have the necessary components for all those enzymatic processes to get completed, you are actually putting yourself in deficit and spending lines of credit instead of actual money that you have in your cellular bank account.
Oh, I love that analogy. Yeah. Yeah. Spot on. Spot on. Yeah, and when we think too, I mean, when you give the visualization of like kind of all the nutrients coming out of the bones, that so often happens too with like pregnant women, carrying babies. I've had individuals who have lost their, or I should say women, pregnant women, who lose their teeth. We hear so often like, hair loss and everything like that, but actually lose their teeth during or after pregnancy. That's how many minerals were just being depleted out of themselves. And I wish I would have known them during, right, the pregnancy, because that's where tissue salts, again, it's like that energetic micromineral there that you can take at those specific times of the month to not only nourish yourself, but then also nourish the baby, that growing fetus. I mean, they're already needing nutrients in the first 2 months. I mean, by week 6, heart is beating, their fingernails or their fingerprints are already made at that point. Their nervous system's already developed. Their neural tube is done. So they have all their nervous system ready to go. It is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the tooth component. When I had my first child is when I got my first cavity in my tooth.
Yeah,
It's
there you go.
actually the only tooth that I've ever had a problem with, and here I am 15 years later and still having a problem with this same tooth, but I had never had a cavity before
Yeah.
I had kids. Um,
Wow. Yeah, that's a great
Very
example.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so calc fluor and calc phos are two really good ones for replenishing the enamel and the strength of the bone as well. So those might be two that would be helpful. Maybe not to,
Which
I know you're not my client, but it's just an idea, right? And again, everyone has access to be able to kind of read up on it as well. But yeah, those are two that might be really beneficial. Yeah.
I
calcium phos, cal phos. Which one did you
Calc
say?
phos and calc fluor, both of those together. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So calcium fluoride, phosphorus,
Phosphoricum. Yep.
phosphoricum. Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, and
Ah,
it depends on where you are in the world too, because there'll be different numbers of cell salts. So don't ever look at like, oh, I need cell salt number 1, because wherever you are in the world, it might be something different. So just so you guys know that as well, whenever recommending like, any type of cell salt, make sure you actually spell out the name, because the number is not always accurate to what's on the product. So just so you guys know that too.
yeah. Yeah, I got one more question for you. When you're dealing with the cell salts, I had purchased an entire set or kit that has
Yeah.
each individual cell salt, but then they also have, and I got this as well, the 12 cell salts
yeah.
all in
Mhm.
one.
Yeah.
And so I was just curious, is there ever a time or need or appropriateness where you would take all 12, or is that a no-no kind of in your world, or how do you
Yeah.
kind of approach that?
When I have clients who have 6 different diagnoses, they're having swelling, they're having pains, I mean, you name it, the multitude of symptoms that they're having, usually they're showing signs of a potential possibility of being deficient in all 12 cell salts. And also, when things have been very chronic, it's no surprise to see that they are needing all 12 because their body is so depleted energetically and physically. So there definitely is a time and a place. I always, though, with every individual, you have to individualize, the care plan. So if someone needs, 6 out of the 12, okay, do you recommend all 12? Or do you just recommend 6? You have to make that distinguishing factor yourself, because there definitely are benefits to doing all 12 together. It can also sometimes be that one time a week thing that you do, or one time a day thing that you do just to keep you out of balance if your diet's not good. So you have to share that too with individuals as well, because if they go and treat themselves every single Saturday to God knows what, right? Whether it be alcohol, whether it be drugs, whether it be poor food choices or going out to eat, they may need to supplement with a 12-in-1 so that they don't actually deplete themselves or put themselves in a position where one of the tissue salts will start to be stronger indicated. So it can be taken prophylactically. That's also a very different distinguishing factor of homeopathy. So that's where tissue salts can be really utilized very beautifully as a preventative and prophylactic, I guess I can't legally say cure, but helper, right? Whereas with homeopathy, we don't necessarily want to always do that prophylactically because that goes against the philosophy of homeopathy. The philosophy of homeopathy is the law of similars, like cures like. If you don't have that original thing, why are you taking something then that can possibly change the energetic frequency of your body to then be more susceptible to then needing some more stuff, right? So you have to always go back to the philosophy too behind these modalities as well. Yeah.
So I am taking all 12 cell salts at the moment, and I was like guided to do so. And I was using them to help the uptake of other sorts of like
Yeah.
reprogram my gut flora.
Yeah.
But I also think right now, because we are in the middle of solar cycle 25 and we are getting pummeled with like photonic blast after blast, and it does work on a frequency level with us, and it also changes our mineral statuses, because when we do get solar blasts, I will sometimes wake up to like a Charlie horse in my leg that is indicating that, you know, I'm burning through magnesium at an extreme rate. You're burning through your electrolytes because these solar flares
Um,
are giving you like photonic light and information, and things are you know, transmuting, shifting, changing, evolving, etc. So I've been taking the all 12 of them because I'm like, woo, we're really in solar cycle 25, y'all. It's just
yeah, you are in tune. I love that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's and again, I don't necessarily like we kind of mentioned before, I don't always recommend certain cell salts based off of those things, but but again, it adds another piece to the puzzle as to
Mhm.
why we're feeling the way we're feeling. And I think that's also important because that brings that level of awareness also to individuals too, right? Because sometimes we start to, when we think we're not feeling very well, we start to blame ourselves, and we put this energy, that negative energy towards us, like, why aren't I feeling better? Like, I'm doing all these great things, incorporating these great things, why aren't I feeling better? And so that piece to the puzzle could totally give a sense of understanding and also a sign of, you know what, prophylactically, I may need to
Yeah.
take Megphos today
Mhm.
because of what's happening in our atmosphere and in our universe. So I think that's a wonderful, yeah, combination to do together. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I also
there's
take the 12-in-1 cell salt too. Sometimes I need it more than others, right? Sometimes I don't even take it during the day, but there's some days where I need it 3 times because I'm just feeling a bit more depleted. And, you know, as women, we're on a 28-day energy cycle, right? Our battery is literally 28 days, whereas with men, it's every single day and they get recharged. So for women, there also are, you know, certain tissue salts that will be beneficial at certain times of the month, right? Just to be able to help that battery get a little bit more charged up and decrease any susceptibility to like PMS symptoms and things like that. Yeah.
And do you think in that respect that, let's say somebody was having menstrual disruption and the battery was not functioning at its you know, it was a little bit like, oh, what's going on? My battery is just like, you know, people complaining of a short cycle or a long cycle or a disrupted cycle, that you could use cell salts to on an energetic love, you know, on an energetic
Wave.
level,
Yeah.
yeah, wavelength, you could in encourage more of a balanced battery life
Yeah.
by maybe inserting nudges here and there in the cycle.
Absolutely. And not just with tissue salts, but then with foods as well. If the person can do it and is open to it as well. Because if you can take again the tissue salt and incorporate the food that it's nourished in or like highest content in, that right there will also maximize absorption as well. Because again, we had just like what we talked about in the beginning, right? That both nutritive and homeopathic benefit together. Yeah. So the food and the supplement together will just like maximize that battery potential for sure. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of this information with us. I'm sure you're just a wealth of knowledge, and people who come to you are, you know, pretty lucky to have you as a practitioner. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for this platform. I have not talked this much about energy on any other podcast before, so I absolutely love it. I love both your guys' energies and spirits, so thank you so much. This has been a real honor to be able to talk with like-minded people on this subject, and we
Yeah.
need more
And so
people like us.
yeah. So outside of Instagram, is you have a website that people can reach you at? And
Yes.
then do you have any projects or anything that you're working on that you want to share with our listeners?
Yes, so valeofhealth.com is my website, and there you'll be able to kind of again reach out to me. I offer free discovery calls. So anyone who is just interested in, again, just learning a little bit more about themselves to see if I'm a good fit or someone else I know is better for a case, I offer that to everyone. And so it's just a great opportunity to connect with people who are curious. Maybe I've never heard about naturopathic medicine, never heard about homeopathy, right? Just to kind of ask questions and to connect. So I offer that to everyone. And again, you can fill that out on my website as well to then get that discovery call link. And then also on my website too, I offer right now just one course, but I am in the process of making a second course. My first course is a tissue salt course. It's Again, we talked about it a lot today. I'll actually give you guys access to both, okay? Just as a thank you for this. So that way you can, share the link to I'm sure in the bio as well on it. But with the self salt course, it's really a foundations to it. So it really allows, because I truly believe at least one person in every single household needs to know homeopathy and needs to know cell salts,
Yeah.
because it could be something to be taken in those acute scenarios that's going to just be, again, that nudge, that gentle shift, and that nutrition and energetic frequency that they need just in that moment before then needing to talk to someone like myself or before needing to go to the emergency room, right? Just again, to give that support, because again, that's something that's been lost in tradition. There used
Right.
to always be someone in the home that knew it. And so I built this course to be that good foundation so that anyone listening to it, right, is going to be able to resonate with it. And for every single cell salt, I've created a theme to each one of them. So like, when you think of like Kelley rice, it's that nervous system supporter or regulator, right? When we think about Meg Foss, it's that antispasmodic helper, right? So just again, giving a theme to the whole thing and then sharing some foods, some specific conditions too that it can be helpful with, because I think people unfortunately resonate with specific titles. And so it's a way for people to be able to be like, oh, I never thought about this helping with this. I understand the theme of weakness, or I understand the theme of spasms, but I didn't realize that this diagnosis is actually causing this. And so it just gives, again, that level of awareness. So that's a course that I offer on my website, and I'm in the process of making a flower essence one as well for all of the Bach flower remedies too. So that's going to be after the new year. But for anyone who is in Southeast Iowa, I am doing a flower essence just one night talking about the top flower essences that are helpful for stress around the holidays. And then you can take home an actual flower essence blend that you make of the flowers that resonate with you in the session that we talk. And then you can make your own and then have it for the holidays. So I am doing that on December 12th at Emporium in Washington, Iowa, from 6 to 7:30. So that's kind of an in-person thing. But again, I'm a virtual practice. So a lot of my stuff is going to be more of a virtual thing. And that's why I started to make those courses as well. But I'll give you two access to it. I'll shoot you an email after. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you, and you'll have to come back and chat with us again soon.
I would love to. I'd love to. Yeah, just let me know after the new year sometime. I would love to. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been
Thank
wonderful.
you.